The oven timer chimed the instant I slid my lemon tart onto the cooling rack, a ribbon of steam curling up from the sugared zest. I wiped my hands on a tea towel, reached for my phone, and tapped the new voice note before I could think better of it. "I can't stand this relic another weekend," my son's voice said, brittle with annoyance. "Soon enough, she'll be tucked away permanently and we'll be drinking Negronis on the Amalfi Coast." The recording ended with laughter that didn't belong to me. I stared at the flour on my knuckles. The message had been meant for Maya, my daughter-in-law, yet it had landed in my kitchen with the force of a thrown stone. For a full 10 seconds, I listened to the fan hum, to the slow tick of the cooling metal, to the whisper of citrus settling in the crust. Then I pressed play again, not because I needed to hear it, but because I needed to feel the ground under my feet. Ethan had forgotten where he was aiming his contempt. He'd sent it to his mother. I set the phone down like it might sting. The hydrangeas in my back garden were just starting to go papery around the edges. Harold used to call that their thinking season. He'd planted 2 rows the year we refinanced the house, so you never stare at a fence, he said. I stood at the window and found his reflection in the glass, the way you find familiar constellations by habit. "All right, Hal," I said softly. "We'll do it your way." Harold and I had made a pact during his last winter. Pancreatic cancer is economical with time. It spends none and demands all. On a Wednesday when the nurse had stepped out for tea, he'd pulled me close and said, "People change around money. Don't be surprised. Be prepared." We spent 3 evenings at the dining table with legal pads and 2 long appointments in a carpeted office where the air smelled like cardboard and polish. When Harold couldn't hold a pen, he used his voice. I pulled the gray binder from the sideboard, the one tied with a red string like a parcel, and set it on the counter beside the tart. The tabs inside still felt crisp. I didn't read. I knew what they said. I just let the weight of the binder sit beneath my palm until my pulse matched its steadiness. Then I called Victor Ames. He answered on the second ring, his tone brisk until he recognized mine. "Mrs. Ellery." "It's Marion Victor," I said. "And yes, it's time." There was a long exhale. "Understood. I'll initiate the contingencies Harold requested and the ancillary provisions we discussed in July. I'll need your verbal authorization on a recorded line." "You have it." He switched me to another extension and read a paragraph I could have recited from memory. I confirmed carefully, clearly, and when the call ended, the binder no longer felt like a prop from a play I wasn't ready to perform. It felt like a door I had finally shut. My phone buzzed again. A text this time from Maya. "Can't wait to see you tomorrow. Ethan's been raving about your tart all week." I typed, "Of course. 11. "Perfect." She added a cupcake emoji I chose not to interpret. The words on the screen sat there a moment, cheerful and weightless. I imagined the hairline cracks beneath them the way glaze fractures invisibly until you run a fingernail along it and feel the ridge. I closed messages and set 2 plates on the counter. I was still going to serve coffee when they came. I was still going to cut slices. But I would not offer myself alongside the dessert. It wasn't as if there hadn't been hints. In April, Ethan had stood in my foyer studying the framed photographs like a curator deciding what to store. Mom, he'd said, adopting the tone he used on clients who needed nudging, "This place is getting big for you." Naomi and I. He corrected himself. Maya and I. We've been talking about options. Options came with brochures. Silver Maples, Harbor View, Seabright Commons. At each glossy address, white-haired people raised watercolor brushes towards sunrise windows, while someone in a polo shirt poured tea. "You'd love the activities," Maya had said, tapping a page where a woman balanced on a blue exercise ball with the concentration of a surgeon. "You'd have a whole community." "I have a community," I'd told her and gestured toward the garden as if the hydrangeas could testify. Then came the suggestion of a financial advisor, Ethan's friend from the club, who could help ensure I didn't outlive my savings. The phrase had lodged sideways in me. Harold and I had managed money for 37 years without spectacle. After he died, I'd learned the passwords and the cadence of bond ladders. Outliving money had not been one of my fears. Outliving judgment had. There were other small cuts. Maya brought peonies, even though I'd told her twice they make me sneeze. She taught me how to use my microwave senior mode, which does not exist. Ethan began asking how often I filled my prescriptions. I do not take prescriptions. Vitamin D does not count. When it became clear their visit would not be canceled, I polished the silver tray Harold's mother left us and ironed the linen napkins with a satisfaction I knew they'd mistake as eagerness. I wrote a single sentence on an index card and slid it under the binder's cover. "You are not a problem to be solved." The doorbell rang at precisely 11 the next morning. Ethan arrived in his best casual shirt, open at the throat blazer that implied he might drop by a showing after coffee. Maya's smile was polished until it squeaked. She held tulips out to me with both hands. Tulips. I accepted them and set them in water and did not touch my face. Mom, Ethan said, hugging me with the careful choreography of someone posing for a photograph. You look great. I feel like a person who has been awake since 6, I said. Come in. They sat at opposite ends of the couch, knees angled toward each other, a united front opened like a book. I poured coffee and noticed, because noticing is a habit, now how Ethan's gaze drifted to the walnut sideboard and the antique mirror, how Maya's lingered on the rug Harold and I found in Asheville when we were still newlyweds and everything felt like planning. We did the weather first. We admired the tart. We did not mention the voice message. When the cups had been set down and the sugar spoon rested like a small silver apostrophe, Ethan cleared his throat. So, he began, Maya and I have been thinking about your setup here. My setup, I said, as if that were the name of a plant I might remember to water. It's just, this is a lot to manage, he said. The yard, the maintenance appointments, and you're on your own. I am 64, I said. Not alone, there's a difference. Of course, Maya said quickly. You're so independent, we admire that, which is why we thought you might like a place that keeps you independent without all the fuss. She reached into her tote and produced a glossy folder with a photograph of a slate blue building that wanted very badly to be a hotel. Sunset Court, the title announced in a modern serif. Below it, Live Well Worry Less. They have 3 restaurants, Maya said, pointing. A salon, a shuttle. There's even a book club that meets on Thursdays. Ethan added, and the monthly fee is all-inclusive, so no surprises. When you sell this place, you'd be set. I turned the brochure over and read the small print, even though I didn't need to. Numbers tell stories more honestly than people. $7,500 a month, I said. 9 if you want the larger unit. It sounds like a lot, Ethan said, but when you factor in property taxes and utilities and... I know how to factor, I said. He flushed. Maya made a sympathetic face at him and then at me, as if she were the interpreter between 2 stubborn nations. We just want what's best, she said. So do I replied. We were quiet long enough to hear the clock in the front hall tick 3 times. A bird landed on the porch rail. Its feet made the faintest sound through the screen. I could feel Harold's careful handwriting under my hand where it rested on the table edge, as if the wood remembered what he'd signed. Ethan tried a different tack. Mom, when you and Dad talked about the will, I don't discuss my will with people who stand to benefit from it, I said. He blinked. We're family. I lifted my cup. Exactly. Across from me, Maya's grip tightened on the brochure until the paper bowed. Marion, she said sweetly, we're not trying to control anything. We're trying to help. Help, I said, as if testing whether the word still meant what it had in 1989 when Harold and I assembled a crib at midnight by the light of a desk lamp. Would you like tart? I stood to fetch plates, not because anyone needed dessert at 11:30, but because I prefer to do my thinking with my hands busy. When I returned, my phone vibrated on the sideboard where I'd left it next to the vase of tulips. I glanced at the screen and saw Victor's name. Excuse me, I said and answered. Marion, he said, voice crisp as an envelope. I'm calling to confirm that the amendments and contingent transfers we discussed have been executed and recorded as of 10:54 this morning. The trust instruments are now in force. Thank you, Victor, I said, letting my words carry just enough to be heard without seeming to perform. Please send me the timestamp confirmations. They'll be in your inbox within the hour. I ended the call. Ethan's expression had gone very still. Maya was smoothing the cover of the brochure with the flat of her palm as if she could iron it back to perfect. I set the phone down, cut the tart, and slid a plate across the table. Sugar, I asked, or are we all watching our intake? No one answered immediately. The clock ticked once more unbothered, and the lemon perfume, bright decisive, rose up between us like a line only I could see. The lemon sat between us, radiant and sharp, as if the tart itself had opinions. No one reached for a fork. Ethan cleared his throat, then cleared it again the second time softer, like he was apologizing to his own voice. You were saying, I asked, and slid the sugar bowl closer to him. He didn't touch it. Maya's smile returned careful and bright. We just want things to be easier for you, Marion. You've done everything for everyone for so long. That's an interesting way to say sell your house, I said. She lowered her eyes. Ethan didn't. He looked at me as if we were on opposite ends of a negotiation table, and he'd just realized I had the better comp. Mom, he began. Before you say another word, I said, and reached for my phone. I want to play you something. It's very short. I pressed the screen. The room filled with his voice, tinny and cruel in the tiny speaker. I can't stand this relic another weekend. Soon enough, she'll be tucked away permanently, and we'll be drinking Negronis on the Amalfi Coast. When it ended, the clock in the hall ticked once, twice. Somewhere outside, a car door closed, ordinary as bread. Maya went still. Ethan's jaw worked, then locked. He stopped. That's out of context. Then give it some, I said. He glanced at Maya, then back at me. We were talking about you being alone. I'm worried. I said it badly. I'm not proud of that. The Amalfi thing was a joke. We were trying to make light of my mortality. His gaze slid to the tart. Of how heavy it's all felt, he said. We were venting. Maya found her voice soft and practiced. We know it sounds terrible, Marion. It does. It was just Ethan's been under a lot of pressure at work. We talk like idiots sometimes when we're stressed. We would never. I slid my phone across the table until it touched the brochure under her hand. You posted a photo of confirmation emails this week, I said. A boutique hotel in Positano, your caption 3 weeks to sun in limoncello. Color rose and fell in her face like a tide. That trip is for our anniversary, she said. Next spring. The email dates say September, I said. Ethan's shoulders caved inward a fraction. He put both hands flat on his knees as if he might stand, then didn't. All right, he said. Yes, we booked it. We thought by fall you might... He swallowed. We thought you might be somewhere that felt safer and we could celebrate, I said. Get away, he said. We haven't been away in years. I looked past him to the hydrangeas outside the window. Last night's wind had blown the smallest petals into the bird bath where they trembled as if something underneath kept exhaling. Harold used to say that's how you could tell when a bird had just left ripples with nowhere to go. Ethan, I said, you sent the message to me. You didn't bother to change your tone for the person it might hurt most. That honesty is useful if nothing else. He stared at his hands. I'm sorry. I believe you are sorry you got caught, I said. I don't know what else you are. We let that sit. Maya reached for her coffee and missed the handle. The cup rocked, caught itself, left a brown ellipse on the saucer. When she spoke again, her voice carried a tremor. Marion, we're not monsters. We're scared. It scares us to imagine you falling or getting dizzy or the boiler breaking in a storm. It scares us to not know what your plan is. You'll be relieved to hear I said that my plan is no longer your problem. Ethan looked up. Something flared in his eyes, anger or confusion, it was hard to tell. What does that mean? It means protections are in place you don't need to understand, I said. And I won't be discussing them further. Mom, you can't make major decisions. I can make any decision I please, I said. If you'd like a second slice, say so. Otherwise, take your coffee. Maya tried to recover ground. We don't want to fight. We came to help. You came to harvest, I said, and stood, and found the field fenced. For a moment, I thought Ethan might shout. Instead, he smoothed his blazer as if the fabric had misbehaved and said very evenly, we should go. Do, I said, and walked them to the door. On the porch, he turned back, a dozen unspoken things flashing across his face like headlines on a train. The one he chose was simple. I love you, he said. Love is a verb, I replied. I'll watch what you do. They crossed the walk. Maya said nothing. At the curb, they climbed into their spotless hatchback and drove away. I stood until the car turned at the corner and kept standing after that, listening to the neighborhood arrange itself back into a Saturday. Inside, I wrapped 2 slices of tart and put them in the freezer. Not because I planned to eat them later, but because it felt civilized to salvage something. Then I made tea and sat at the table with the binder and read the index tabs as if they were lines in a poem. Amendments, triggers, charitable designations, durable authorities. So much language to build a single wall. When the phone rang, I didn't flinch. The name on the screen made me wish I could. Hi, Mom, Lila said too brightly. My daughter lives across the river in a new townhouse with a balcony, just large enough for 2 chairs and an herb pot. She grows rosemary and forgets it is there until it goes brown. Hello, Lil. How are you? She asked. Ethan said he said you seemed... He wasn't coherent, frankly. Are you okay? I am, I said. A beat. Good, she said. Good. I've been meaning to call you all week anyway. I wanted to check in. You know I worry about you in that house, especially after the storm last month when the street flooded. It's a lot. And your back? My back is fine, I said. Right, she said. I know. I just listen. Have you thought about a condo? Not a god, not a facility. Just a nice building with an elevator and a doorman. There's one in the Exchange with a view of the park. I could take you to see it. You'd love the light. There it was, the gentle approach, wrapped in affection and marketable sunshine. Lila, I said, are you and your brother discussing my living arrangements on a call schedule, or do you improvise? Silence, then carefully. We talk about you because we care. Do you talk about my money because you care too? She exhaled. Okay, she said. That's not fair. What feels fair to you, I asked. That I ask fewer questions and sign more papers. She was quiet a long moment. When she spoke again, the brightness was gone. I miss you, she said. Before Dad died, you laughed more. You made pear pancakes on Fridays. You didn't look at us like we were salesmen at your door. Then stop bringing brochures, I said. I've brought exactly 0 brochures, she said, and I could hear the small truth in it. Lila is the one who lets others carry the folders and then says with a flush in her cheeks, maybe they have a point. I've brought dinners and kids and my terrible backgammon and my messy husband. I've brought myself. Bring yourself tomorrow, then, I said, without opinions about where I should sleep. I can do that, she said quickly. I'll bring baked ziti. Bring whatever you like, I said. Bring your hands empty. She hesitated. Ethan said he said you threatened him. I told him the truth, I said. It feels like a threat when you've been living on assumptions. I didn't know about any message, she said, about Amalfi. I didn't know. I'm glad I said. I prefer my children incompetent at malice. We said our goodbyes. I made another cup of tea and carried it to the chair Harold used to prefer by the window, the one with the sun stripe across the arm in afternoons. The house hummed in the familiar way of old houses water running, where you couldn't see wood remembering what it once was. I held my tea and did the arithmetic of grief and insult and time. The sum didn't change when I set the cup down. It rarely does. At 6:50 the next morning, the doorbell rang. No one decent rings at 10 to 7 unless something has happened or they want something very badly. I tied my robe and opened the door to my son, unshaven and gray around the edges in a way that didn't suit him. Please, he said with no preface, can I come in? I stepped aside. He walked to the kitchen like he had when he was 17, careful not to look at anything that might remind him there was a mother in the room. I poured coffee. He wrapped his hands around the mug and didn't drink. I'm sorry, he said. The words came out with effort as if they had been caught on something in his throat. Not for getting caught, for saying it, for thinking it, for the way he stopped, for the way I've treated you like a logistical challenge. I waited. My commissions are down 60%, he said. The office cut leads. We refinanced twice. The car doesn't matter. I've been stupid and mean, and I told myself it was stress, that it would be temporary, that I was. He smiled without any humor. I told myself I was trying to protect you, as if wanting your money was a kind of protection. Words are easy, I said. I know, he said. He looked up, and the look was a boy's, for a second bewildered at the mess he'd made with something he didn't mean to break. What do I do? That depends what you want, I said. Do you want me, or do you want what I have? I want my mother back, he said. The one who saved the corner pieces of puzzle for me. The one who hid the bigger slice of cake on my birthday under a bowl and pretended it was magic. She didn't go anywhere, I said. You stopped looking at her and started looking at her things. He nodded and swallowed. If I show you, I can do better. If I call you to ask about your day and not your roof, if I stop keeping a spreadsheet in my head of what things might be worth. He winced at his own confession. If I do all that, could you ever? No, I said, and watched the word hit him. Not as a bargain. Love is not a coupon you redeem for estate planning. He blinked hard. So that's it. It means I said that whatever documents exist will not be adjusted to reward contrition. That isn't how we do things here. If you want your mother, you get her with no ledger attached. If you want generosity down the line, you begin with generosity now. He nodded slowly. Tell me what generosity looks like. You start by believing me, I said. When I say I am well, you don't argue. When I say I'm busy, you don't remind me of my age. When I buy myself a winter coat, you don't ask the price. When I speak, you put your phone down. He let out a breath. I can do that. And you stop asking me to sign things I said, for a year. He looked surprised. A year? Ask me again about anything with a signature in 12 months, I said. Between now and then, you practice being a son with empty hands. He nodded. Okay, he said. Okay. We sat for a while the way people do when the worst thing has already been said, and the only thing left is to exist in a room together and see if the air allows it. When he left, he hugged me like someone who had remembered he once liked the way a mother smells soap and lemon and whatever else accumulates on skin that has cooked for other people most of its life. On the porch, he turned as he had the day before, but instead of the reflexive, I love you, he said. Call me if you need anything. Then he shook his head. No, I'll call you to see if you want coffee. I prefer tea, I said. He smiled and it looked real. He was halfway down the walk when I said, Ethan. He turned. Cancel Positano, I said. You won't want to be that far from your phone this month. I already did, he said, and left. At noon, Lila arrived with the promised baked ziti, which steamed like an argument. She kissed my cheek and promptly rearranged my cutlery drawer while claiming she couldn't find the serving spoon. You look better, she said. I took a shower, I said. She laughed and then sobered. I called Ethan after we talked, she said. He told me about yesterday. He's an idiot. Your brother is a person who has made poor choices, I said. An idiot, she repeated, glancing up with a look that asked whether I'd accept sisterly loyalty offered as a small bouquet. I nodded. She put the bouquet away. Over lunch, she told me about the neighbor's yapping dog and Rowan's losing streak at pickleball and the way their youngest had decided sleeping was for cowards. The normalcy felt like a cool cloth on hot skin. I let my shoulders drop a centimeter. I refilled her water. She ate with reckless gratitude as if ziti tasted better in the house you grew up in. We cleared plates. She brought out a box from the bakery near her place and opened it with a flourish. Raspberry tarts, she said. You love them. I do. I said and didn't mention that last winter she'd said raspberry seeds made her teeth feel like gravel. Today they were a gesture. I ate the top half and let the rest sit on my plate like a small pink moon. When we were done, she folded her hands, the change in posture so slight most people would have missed the pivot. "Mom," she said, "can I say something without you hearing numbers under it?" "You can say anything," I said. "I think you should spend your money," she said. "On yourself, on things you enjoy, classes, trips, good shoes. Not because anyone deserves less, because you deserve more than caution. Last month you told me to move to something smaller to preserve capital," I said. "I was wrong," she said and met my eyes. "I was thinking like a nervous daughter. I don't want to be nervous. I want to be happy for you. Happy enough to encourage me to empty accounts so there's nothing to fight over later," I said. She didn't flinch at the aim. "Happy enough to want you unfettered," she said. "You are very good," I said. "You always have been." At what she asked. "At offering the words that open doors," I said. "The question is where they lead." She pushed her chair back half an inch, a retreat, so graceful it could almost pass for a stretch. "If you think I'm manipulating you, say it. Don't make me guess." "Everyone is always manipulating everyone," I said. "It's the human condition. The trick is to notice and then decide." She nodded, and the nod was for once not a tactic. "Decide then," she said, "and tell me where I can stand." "Beside me," I said, "with your hands empty." We did the dishes. She left with the pan, which she promised to return clean, which she would not. After the door closed, the house inhaled as it does, and then exhaled once a long old house sigh. I stood in the middle of the kitchen and listened to myself. I went to the sideboard and took out the binder again, not because its contents had changed in the past 24 hours, but because I had. I laid a pad of paper beside it and made a list, not of grievances or demands, but of facts. I am well. The roof does not leak. The boiler is due for inspection in October. The hydrangeas will need to be cut back. I wrote Victor's name. I wrote a time. When I called his office, he answered himself, Marion. "I'd like copies," I said. "Stamped, timed. Everything we discussed, and I want to review the ancillary items we tabled in July." "Of course," he said. "Come in at 2 tomorrow." "That works." I hung up. Outside, a breeze moved the birdbath petals into a new ring, edges overlapping a quiet little democracy. I carried my plate to the sink, rinsed it clean, and set it in the rack to dry. Then I put the tart under a glass dome the way my mother had, a trivial, beautiful safeguard, and turned the binder so the red string faced the room. Victor's building was a brick row house on a quiet street where the Maples kept their own counsel. At 2 o'clock, the receptionist pressed a button and the latch clicked. I climbed the narrow stairs and caught the smell of paper and polish that lives in old law offices the way time lives between flagstones. Victor stood when I entered his conference room. He was one of those men who look perpetually on time. A ceramic pitcher of water beaded on a tray, a legal pad waited at my chair with a pencil sharpened to humility. "Marion," he said, "thank you for coming." "Thank you for answering your own phone," I said. He offered a small smile and slid a folder across the table. The cover read, "Ellery Trust Ancillary Provisions," in a font that wanted no attention. "You authorized me yesterday to implement the instruments you and Harold prepared," he said. "Those are executed. There is also the matter Harold asked me to keep sealed unless certain conditions were met." "And were they?" I asked. He tapped the folder with one finger. "You received a voice message from your son that reasonably demonstrates contempt and anticipatory profiteering," he said as if reciting a weather report. "You also described a pattern-repeated pressure to relocate inquiries about access to assets and the introduction of an advisor with a close personal tie to the party who stands to benefit. Yes, the conditions are met." He opened the folder. The first page was all rectangles, boxes with arrows like a city plan. "The structure is simple," he said. "The primary trust holds the residence and designated brokerage accounts. A protective rider, what Harold called the storm shutter, reroutes distributions to 3 charitable entities if either named child engages in manipulation or coercion as defined in the rider. The definitions are quite specific." "How specific?" I asked. "Attempts to obtain power of attorney through misrepresentation. Efforts to secure a competency evaluation without medical cause. Procuring life insurance on your person without your knowledge or consent. Any scheme to accelerate your need for custodial care. Any coordinated effort to influence your housing or financial decisions through deception." He looked up. Harold was thorough. He liked solid fences, I said. "There is a second component," Victor continued. He turned a page and revealed numbers that did not belong to this quiet room. "Harold moved funds over the years into a separate account in your name alone, accessible only by you. It is not part of the primary trust and is therefore not subject to challenge through the instruments your children believe they understand." I stared at the bottom line. "Commas can tilt a room. You didn't know the exact figure," Victor said. "Harold wanted you to know the architecture, not the elevation, unless you needed it." "How much?" I asked, because having eyes does not mean you have seen. 3.2, he said. "Conservative allocations, very boring returns all compounded." I let the number sit. It did not make me feel rich. It made me feel that Harold had spent years tucking pennies behind radiators and under rugs while pretending he hadn't, and that he had trusted me to find them only if the kitchen flooded. Victor closed that tab and opened another. Finally, he said Harold retained an investigator during his illness. Not to surveil your children in the ugly sense, but to obtain an honest picture of their obligations and risks. His reports update quarterly. Who is he? I asked. Noah Pike, he said, very discreet. He'll join us shortly. As in this room, I said. Yes, Victor said. I think seeing the full picture is preferable to shadows, and I think it's time to invite your children here as well. I looked at the water beads sliding down the pitcher. I remembered the way Ethan had balanced his coffee cup like it might betray him, and the way Lila had folded her hands before changing her tone. All right, I said. I prefer a table to a hallway. Victor nodded once as if that decided the weather. He stepped out. I listened to the low conversation in the corridor that happens when people calibrate how honest to be. The door opened to admit a man in his 50s with librarian posture and a habit of leaving space around each word. Mrs. Ellery, he said. I'm Noah. You've met my family on paper, I said. I have, he said. I prefer paper to speculation. Ethan arrived first. He looked tired in a way that sleep can't fix. Maya walked a half step behind him, her expression composed from a distance and uncertain up close. 10 minutes later, Lila came in with Rowan, who carried the almost smile of a man rehearsing patience. They sat facing me like a panel. Victor poured water for everyone, which felt like a ceremony. Thank you for coming, he said. I asked you here because certain questions have been asked about Marion's affairs, and the best place to address questions is a table. We're going to keep our voices even and our statements specific. No one objected. The street outside offered a bus sighing at the corner, the city apologizing for its own weight. Victor folded his hands. I will begin with what is already true, he said. As of yesterday morning, amendments and riders to Marion's estate plan were executed and recorded. These instruments are valid. Their primary purpose is to ensure Marion's autonomy and to protect her from coercion. Everything else in this room is context. Ethan shifted. What does that mean for us? He said. It means, Victor replied, that the conditions under which you might receive anything are within the documents, not within this conversation. If you are here hoping to negotiate, there is nothing to negotiate. Lila's jaw tightened. So why are we here? She asked. Because Victor said calmly, there are things you should see before you decide what to say next. He looked at Noah, who opened a slim folder and slid 4 sheets across the table, one to each of us. The paper was crowded in meticulous credit lines, balances, transactions, dates. Ethan glanced, then stopped glancing and began to read. Lila's eyes flicked faster, as if speed would rewrite numbers. Maya was first to speak. You've been watching us, she said to me, but her eyes were on Victor. No, I said. No one has been watching you. Someone gathered facts available to grown people who apply for loans and insurance and help. Noah's voice held no heat. Mr. Ellery retained me to help him understand whether his family might be under pressure he hadn't seen, he said. He was dying. He wanted accuracy. Rowan tapped his page once. This is invasive, he said. It is arithmetic, Noah said. If it helps, I find it unpleasant too. Ethan put his paper down as if it weighed more than paper. He kept his hands on it. So you know we're struggling, he said. Is this the part where you tell us to be ashamed? No, I said. This is the part where you stop pretending your concern is purely pastoral. Color came and went in Lila's face. I never pretended, she began and then stopped. When she spoke again, her voice was steady. We were worried and we were calculating, she said. Both can be true. Victor let the silence be long and then folded it neatly. There is one additional document that must be addressed, he said. He slid a separate sheet to Ethan. A policy purchased 3 months ago. Maya leaned in. Ethan read and didn't look up. What is it? Layla asked. Victor answered. A life insurance policy on Marion with double indemnity for accidental death, he said. Beneficiary Ethan Ellery. The application states he has assumed caregiving responsibilities. The signature may be his. The consent line where the insured party would normally sign is creative. Maya turned fully to Ethan, her control dissolving at the edges. You didn't, she said. He kept staring at the page. We were drowning, he said. I told myself it was responsible to have something in place. Funerals are expensive. You hear that at work all the time. I told myself a lot of things. That's not caregiving, Layla said, voice low. It's also not legal, Victor added without flourish. Marion is not seeking to press charges today, but since we are here to speak plainly, you have procured a product that presumes your mother's death is a financial event, with you as the solution. Ethan finally looked at me. He had our family's eyes blue that looks tender when it feels cornered. I'm sorry, he said. It wasn't a performance. It also wasn't a key. I slid my hands together in my lap. There are provisions in the documents Harold and I executed, I said. If either of you engages in certain conduct, your shares collapse to zero and pass elsewhere. The conduct is defined, not guessed at. It includes the acts you have already attempted. That collapse is now in effect. Maya made a sound that was almost a laugh and almost a sob. Nothing, she said. Nothing, I said. Lila closed her eyes and opened them again quickly, as if to keep from smudging whatever she saw there. Is there any path back? She asked. Not to money, she added, almost convincing herself. To you. I looked at her, then at Ethan, then at the pitcher, where the beads had formed a line and were slipping down to join the rest. If you can speak to me, be with me without asking about assets, without measuring rooms with your eyes, without suggesting buildings with shuttles and slogans, then perhaps we will find our way around a kitchen together, I said. If you cannot, then you will not. And the documents, Ethan asked. It was almost a whisper. They are not a lever for behavior, I said. They are a fence. Fences don't move because someone says they're sorry. Rowan, who had been quiet, leaned forward, palms flat on the table like someone offering up honesty in exchange. I've said more than once that you should sell, he said. I said it because the radiator sounded like a kettle last winter, and because the stairs are narrow, and because I prefer things that come with service numbers. But I have not plotted. I have not bought policies. I have on 2 occasions mowed your strip of verge because the city is petty about fines. He lifted his hands. That is the inventory, I can admit without flinching. You have always had the cleanest inventory, I said. Maya spoke into the space his words made. We were crass, she said. I was. I turned worry into a plan with price points. She turned to Ethan. And I played along when you said things you wouldn't let yourself think at a normal volume. Ethan's mouth opened and closed. You wanted the hotel more than I did, he said, and then flinched at himself. Enough, Victor said softly, and the word held. He set his pen down square to the pad. There is the question of contact, he said to me as if asking what time I wanted lunch. 5 years, I said. The number surprised me with its shape the second it left my mouth, but it felt like something the house itself might have suggested, long enough to check whether vines will take long enough to test a roof through seasons. If you can go that long without raising money or documents or recommendations about where I should live, if you can go that long being my children instead of my case managers, then call me. If you cannot, then we have answered what kind of family we are. Lila swallowed. 5, she said like she was tasting a stone. 5, I said. Ethan stared at his hands. And the other matter, he asked, which was his way of saying, are you going to turn me in for a thing I wish I had not done? No charges, I said. I watched the relief hit him and then leave because relief lands strangely when it does not bring back what you wanted most. But the policy is not yours to keep. It will be canceled. You will not replace it. Noah will confirm. Noah inclined his head. I will, he said. He wrote a note in the small block letters of people who enjoy legibility. Victor gathered the papers into stacks. We're done, he said, and his tone made it true. Marion, if you'd like a moment before you leave. I'm fine, I said and stood. The chair made a small respectful sound against the rug. We moved as a group to the corridor. In the thin hallway light, Ethan turned toward me, hands empty, which is how I had asked him to be. I don't know how to talk without trying to fix things, he said. I will try to learn. I don't need you to fix things, I said. I need you to stop breaking them while you say you're fixing them. He nodded twice as if he could make a rhythm of it and follow the rhythm down a set of stairs. Lila waited until the others started ahead. Do you want me to come by later? She asked. To sit or to do nothing properly, I can manage both. Not today, I said, but thank you for the offer. She kissed my cheek, a brief press that felt like a signature in pencil. Rowan lifted 2 fingers in a small salute and followed her down. Maya lingered a beat, eyes bright with the effort of holding a certain shape. I brought peonies because I like them, she said quietly. I never asked if you did. She exhaled. Tulips last time because I saw them in a magazine and I thought they meant spring. I prefer the kind that don't make me sneeze, I said. She nodded the barest nod and left. In the conference room's retreating quiet, Victor refilled my glass and set it within reach. Do you need me to call you a car? He asked. No, I said. I'll walk. On the sidewalk, the late sun made a ledger of the street debits and credits of light balanced under the maples. I passed a woman laughing into her phone and a child hopping from crack to crack, as if the cracks were lava and the world depended on his ankles. At the corner, the bus sighed, again apologizing to no one. I stood a moment and let the sound pass through. Then I turned toward home and followed the seam of shade the trees had laid down for anyone with the sense to use it. Noah called 3 days after the meeting. He didn't preface, just said, I'm on your street, and a minute later his knock came 3 even taps like a metronome. We sat at the kitchen table. The tart dome caught the afternoon light. The red string on the binder lay like a line someone had drawn and dared me to cross. Noah opened his laptop and angled the screen. Screenshots, he said, from Ethan's and Maya's texts this week. A column of blue and a gray speech bubbles, timestamps neat as ledger lines. She's barely speaking to us from Ethan. Maybe a scare will bring her back our way from Maya. A photo of my class sign-up from the community center circled. If she thinks someone's after her, she'll need us, Maya, again. A final message from Ethan Peopleslip. Stairs, wet leaves. We just stop hovering. I felt my hands go cold but steady like the air before snow. Not in these threads, Noah said. I do have voicemail transcriptions where she urges patience and no stunts. She's not part of this. Then she keeps her name, I said. Noah lifted his phone, already dialing. I'm notifying Detective Foss. Insurance procurement without consent plus the intent embedded in these messages will interest her. You think they'll come here? I asked. I think they're outside, he said quietly and tipped his head toward the window. On the porch, the bell rang, a bright domestic sound that belonged to casseroles, not to what followed. I opened the door to Ethan and Maya, both freshly pressed, both carrying expressions ironed into the shape of concern. Mom, Ethan said, and the word worked in his mouth like a coin he hadn't spent yet. We were in the neighborhood. Maya held up a white bag from the bakery in the exchange, the one Lila likes. Raspberry tarts, she said. Your favorite. You remembered wrong, I said and stepped aside. Come in. In the living room, their eyes moved the way eyes move in galleries left to right, assessing scale. They chose the sofa. I took the chair nearest the window where Noah stood, all at once present and unremarkable. Marian, Maya said, folding her hands around the bag like it was fragile. We hate how things felt at Victor's. We hate that you think we... I don't think I said. I read. Ethan's jaw clicked. If this is about the policy, it is about the policy, I said, and the text. Color left his face like someone had opened a drain behind it. Maya turned her head a fraction toward him and then back to me. We were venting, she said. You know how private jokes sound if you don't know the tone. We just stop hovering, I quoted. What's the tone there? Hyperbole, Ethan said weakly. From the kitchen came the faint echo of a siren, distant, then nearer, then at the corner. Maya's back straightened. You called the police? I didn't need to, I said. Noah did. Ethan stood so quickly the coffee table trembled. On what grounds? On the grounds that you bought a product that pays you. When I die and then discuss creating conditions where age does your work, Noah said, stepping forward, his voice even. On the grounds that the consent line is a forgery. On the grounds that coercion leaves fingerprints. Coercion, Maya said, half laugh, half plea. We brought pastries. From the porch, feet, voices. The door opened to Detective Foss, hair pulled back, badge at her belt, the sort of calm that means she has seen more than one version of this room. 2 uniformed officers stood behind her, large and quiet as bookcases. Mrs. Ellery, she said, nodding to me, and then to them. Ethan Ellery, Maya Ellery, I'm Detective Foss. We're here with a warrant for electronic records and to ask you some questions. Maya rose with both palms out. This is a misunderstanding, she said. We're family. That complicates motive, Foss said, not unkindly. It doesn't erase acts. She accepted the folder Noah handed her, skimmed the top page, and looked back at Ethan. We can do this here or at the precinct. Here is gentler. Ethan looked at me as if there might be a last bridge no one had noticed. Mom, he said, please. I held his gaze and found only our faces older where the bones break the surface first. You brought this into my house, I said. You don't get to choose which door it leaves by. Maya's voice thinned. We didn't hurt you. You tried to shorten the distance between now and a check, Noah said. Sometimes intent arrives as logistics. The law doesn't always care for that poetry. Foss nodded to the uniforms who moved, not like a storm but like winter. She explained the formality of the search. Ethan sat when she asked. Maya handed over her phone chin high, as if posture could reset a story. As they were led to the porch, Ethan turned once more. I wanted to fix it, he said, and the words were truer than he meant them to be. I know, I said. The door closed. For a moment the house seemed to float an inch above its foundation, as if the weight it had been carrying had been lifted and the timber was remembering how to be wood. Foss lingered long enough to leave a card on the hall table and a sentence on the air. We'll keep you updated, she said. Mr. Pike will coordinate. After they were gone, Noah shut his laptop and looked at the lemon dome like a man about to suggest tea. Do you have anyone you want me to call? He asked. No, I said. I'll make it a list on my own. He nodded, and when he left, he touched the red string on the binder with one finger, a small salute to a plan that had done its work without boasting. 6 months later, I watched rain sweep across the Liffey and thrum against the cafe windows, Dublin dressed in its favorite gray. A postcard lay on the table addressed to my neighbor with the lilacs half written. The city smells like wool and bread. I walked until my feet gave up their opinions. My phone buzzed with a message from a number I didn't know. The preview showed 2 words and a name. I'm sorry, Ethan. I turned the phone face down and finished the postcard. I signed my name without flourish. When I stepped back into the weather, the air met me like something that didn't need explaining. The river kept moving. Somewhere far away, a bell marked the hour, ordinary and exact. I set my collar and walked, and the city made room. The way good streets do, a straight path between wet stone and the sound of my own shoes. Thank you so much for listening to today's story. If this story resonated with you or made you reflect, I'd love to hear your thoughts, so feel free to share them in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss the next story. I'll see you next time as we continue exploring more journeys and lessons together.